So today what we talk about is first why we should engage on social media for both nature and the climate, how we define our audience, our goals, and the right channel to talk about the climate crisis, and how we can curate our own message. We will also have, Taylor already told you, but we are also having some tips about design and how to use design to influence action. And I see that you have a good understanding already on why we should engage with social media for nature and for the climate. So you all are very excited about this and you are all very interested. So I think that we don't need to go over very deeply on this, and maybe we can focus today on defining the audience and the goals. So we focus today on online and pragmatic communication. So what does this mean in practice is that we will focus on social media and on communication that drives action and invite our audience for action. So I think you all understand the big role that social media has in our lives. From your introduction, I already see that. But I would maybe just focus that when it comes to nature, nature is misrepresented or not even represented sometimes. So this is an opportunity for us to use social media to talk about nature in a way that is inclusive and in a way that it's nice. Now we can maybe move on to the defining your audience part. So when we talk about audience, we are defining who are the people receiving our message and who are the ones that we are communicating to. So when you define who these people are going to be, so usually when I first started doing blogs, when I first started doing communication online, I had this idea of reaching to the entire world, because I know my message is very important. I know our message of climate change and environmentalism is very important. So I kind of wanted that everyone in the world would listen to it and everyone in the world would know what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because basically our language doesn't reach everyone at once. And always when we communicate, we have a certain person or a certain group in mind, and we speak to these people or to this group. I can maybe give an example. So I first started blogging, and I first started blogging talking about curly hair and talking about natural hair. And I had this kind of, I started doing some activism to expand the themes of not only embracing our natural hair, how it is, but also talking about feminism. And in this, I thought it would be very nice to talk to men as well. So I tried to talk to men. And in the end, it didn't work out because they were simply not interested. But then I realized that my language and my tools, they could reach girls and women, and this could be even more powerful because they understand exactly what I mean, and they have the same experience as I did with my hair. So I basically used all of this experience that I've had with my hair, with this process of accepting it, of embracing my roots, of saying, hey, I want my natural hair, to also talk about environment, to also talk about feminism, to also talk about racism and diversity. So this is basically what I want to invite you to reflect about it today, that the audience that you can influence the most is the audience that you already talk to and the audience that you already have a great connection to through your own lived experience. And then you can ask yourself, who do you have more chances of influencing, and who needs to understand your message? So it can be also very tempting to think, well, I want now to talk directly to CEOs of fossil fuel companies because they need to change. They are the ones who need to change. And that's true, they are. But if, for example, I concentrate in talking to girls, and some of you will have great success talking to boys, and in the end, we will have both groups. So it's totally okay to specialize and narrow down in our own specific audience. And this is important now that I talk about narrowing down, because we can have different accesses. So we will talk a little bit more about this with a practical exercise. But for example, if you are a mom, you can think that it's easy for you to reach the moms, and then moms are your audience. But maybe it's always good to narrow it down For example, even something more tangible like young moms of immigrant background between 25 and 35 years old with small children. And why does this matter? Because when you're talking about climate change, the message for a mom like my mom, who is 50 years old and something, is completely different message to a young mom of a young child, because this young mom must be worried sick about what the future for this child is going to be. My mom might be a bit worried, but not too much. So the message is going to be completely different. And the same happens with CEOs, for example. If you want to talk to CEOs, if you talk to medium-sized companies, it's completely different. Or even if you talk about CEOs of small startups or small entrepreneurships, or this works with everything. Other different and interesting groups are also students. They are also anything related to your own lived experience. I see here that there is some some uh, some comments here. Yes, I noticed. Thank you a lot, Shelton, for commenting. So I received a comment from Shelton that it's very relevant, that he's new to the community and he would like to know more about Youth for Nature. So I'm noticing now that I didn't say anything about Youth for Nature. I just kind of assumed that everyone would know, which is always not so good. But so Youth for Nature is an international organization. We were founded in 2019, and our goal is to elevate the voices of youth to act for nature and the climate. So we act within this nexus of nature and climate. We have currently 3 pillars of action. So one is storytelling, the other one is capacity building, and the third one is knowledge sharing. So all of our actions, they range usually around these 3 pillars. So what we do today is capacity building, for example. So we are sharing tools, and we are sharing practice examples of how you can communicate about climate change on social media. And it's completely youth-led. Thanks a lot, Ibrahim, for sharing Youth for Nature website. And this specific workshop is part of the Spring of Hope campaign. So from now until June, we are sharing many events and many cool materials. We are going to have, for example, a meme festival happening in April very soon. And you get the opportunity to participate in all of these very interesting and cool events. What did you say? No. So thanks a lot for your question, Esmeralda. So she's asking if the audience have to say the same for all the posts on one same platform. So this is very good, and I'm also going to talk about it, and I'm very happy that you brought this up, because you might have different audiences on different platforms. So for example, the example of my blog, I talk to young girls and women of curly hair about the environment. But when I go to my LinkedIn, for example, this is a complete different audience. On LinkedIn, I talk to professionals. Most of them are young professionals, and maybe half of them are women. So then this is completely different channels and completely different audiences. So it's completely fine to have different audiences, and I would say that it's even recommended. So on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever social media that you choose, it's always a nice practice to consider different audiences and how you communicate to these different audiences. So yes, that's a very good question. Thanks a lot for asking. Now we go about defining your goals. So when you do a communication, any type of communication, you always have a goal. So I'm talking to you right now, and I have one objective. Sometimes it's not always clear. Sometimes it's not always conscious, but they are still goals. So my goal today here, it might be maybe convincing you that these are great tools and great ways of communicating about climate change. But you can have, when you define these goals consciously and when you can define them strategically, you can increase your possibilities of impact, and you can increase your reach as well. So with climate crisis, we also want to drive action, and we also want to drive we also don't want just to communicate for communicate, but we have goals with this communication, and these goals, they can be very different. So you can have the goal to educate your audience. You can have the goal to mobilize actions, so explicitly invite to join a movement, or explicitly invite to create something, or explicitly invite to take action. You can also generate a debate, so ask for someone to share their opinions or to tell more. And you can also give visibility to certain initiatives. So for example, in Youth for Nature with the storytelling campaign, our basic and main communication goal is to give visibility for these initiatives, but sometimes we also mobilize and we also educate. So when you are curating your message, so when you are writing one tweet, or when you are creating one Instagram story, you can always make sure to focus in one goal for that specific piece of communication. So if I'm writing a tweet and I want to raise attention for one issue that is happening, that here in Finland currently, I just found out that one state company bought a new coal factory in Canada. So then I can invite people through one of these calls for actions. And it's also very important to understand the stage of maturity of your audience. So for you to engage on mobilization, what types of things need to happen before that? So for example, the first thing that I asked you today was about what were your expectations. So I realized that you already had an idea why social media would be important. So I jumped completely. But before I thought, before I teach them how to mobilize, I need them to understand that this is important. So with climate crisis is the same. We cannot just assume that everyone will find important. So if your audience doesn't think this is important, you need maybe to go back a few steps and start on the education process, or the information call to action, or even the debate call to action. So this is always important to understand how willing your audience it is to consider this information, and what types of strategies you need to do to engage with them. So now we will have a practice exercise, because I just don't want this to be just me talking and talking all times. This picture, by the way, is from Taylor. She lives in the Netherlands, and this is a very nice picture. Just wanted to share. So I will now show you the exercises and how they're gonna work. So does everyone have visibility of my screen? Yeah, is it working?
Yes.
Okay, working. Perfect. Just before I go to the exercise, I see a question that if we want an audience that is already aware and not interested in non-concerned people, it's a choice, right? Definitely it's a choice. You can choose the audience that it's even easy for you, because, yeah, okay, interested, yes. One lesson that I want to bring today is that it's completely fine, and sometimes even the like preferable that you choose audiences that you are comfortable with and that you might have an easy job to convince. So in that I don't know if I understand completely your question, Meredith, but it's completely fine to choose the audience that is already aware. So like today, my audience is completely aware, and I'm communicating to you and to an audience that knows that the climate crisis and the environmental crisis is a problem. So this is completely fine. And yes.
If I can just add on, this is just like
Yes.
a point of view that I think, like on social media, you can totally choose like to whom you want to address, and you can totally avoid who you don't want to talk to. Obviously, there will be people that can come on your platform and start like directing to you and talk to you and so on. But I think it's like your own choice who you want to address what to. And if you want to, for example, if you're thinking you're a step away, like forward in climate storytelling and climate fight and so on, this is your choice to not have to go back to basic of like what is climate change. I think.
Definitely. And also because we are all humans and we all have limitations of time and capacity. So we should also not overwhelm ourselves trying to convince audiences that are very hard to convince. So I think that this is a very, very good comment because we can have a very good impact with people that are already aware. They just need a little push to take some action. And this is good. This is valid and this is completely fine and very welcoming to the climate space. So now for the exercise, I see another question. That's great. With what you decide to share or post on social media, you indirectly choose and select your audience that is understanding of your aware vocabulary. Exactly, Julia. So we are anyways attached to a certain audience and this happens anyways. So better make also strategic and better use this for your own of your own strength. I like this concept a lot. This comment reminds me of it, that it's kind of like hacking the system, so breaking it from the inside. So social media has this effect of making us go into a bubble of kind of like we just talk to the people of our bubble and we think that everyone is progressive, everyone believes climate change is real, but we are all just shouting to our bubbles. But I think we can also use this bubble effect to our own favor and to our own good, and this is the idea here. So kind of using social media problems to convert in good and to convert in climate action. Does anyone have any comments or questions or would like to say anything? Okay. If you just want to, like I said, feel free to interrupt me. I'm Brazilian. I don't care. So I don't mind being interrupted. And I also interrupt people a lot.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I just lost connection and reconnected back, and I want to get glance of the exercise on the screen. Yeah, I think.
Okay, that's no problem. You didn't lose anything. So now we talk about the exercise, and the idea here is to practice understanding one target audience, so one group of people, or you can even think about one person even. You would think about why they would be interested in climate change, or even why not they would be interested. What would be your goal or goals, and what are the characteristics of this audience? What would they like to hear? What type of content would convince them more to achieve these goals of yours? And then this would be basically the exercise. I will send to you the link on the on the chat because each of you will have a slide. So here I will, I know something. Here you can write your name in the slide. So you don't mix your slide with the others. And here you can write the answers to the exercise. We will all have 10 minutes for that. And after that, we are gonna come back here and discuss a little bit about how it was the exercise and so on. Meanwhile, I'm gonna stay here. So if you have any questions or if you need any help, just go ahead and ask. I will just stop sharing my screen. No. So this is the link to the slides. The first one has a typo. But this is the link. You can just now go to the slides and you type your name to the slide that you're gonna practice the exercise at. And then you just start practicing thinking about your target audience. And you can do that either from the point of view of yourself. So if you want to become more, if you want to increase your reach in social media as an activist, as a person, like as your own personal account, but you can also do from the point of view of the organization. So I think that Demi and Esmeralda, you had ideas for your own organizations that you would like to improve. So you can also do from the point of view of the organization. So it's fine. I see also some comments. Yes, that's great addition. Thanks, Rach. So Rach is saying here in the chat that you can also try to find interesting angle that would work with audiences that are not interested. So this is what I did with my audience on curly hair, that I used my natural hair to talk about environment and to raise sustainability issues. I've been talking a lot to Meredith, my friend who is here, because she's passionate about photography, that she can use photography to talk about feminism. And I think these are all very valid angles. And currently we are doing a meme festival to use memes to talk about sustainability. And you can always use humor, and you can always use playful techniques and all of that to be able to convince audiences that are not very good question, Jonathan, about how we can overcome climate deniers attacks on social media. I still don't know. I think this is something very difficult, but I do happen to have a resource that Julia shared with me. Is it okay, Julia, if I shared the slides that you shared about climate denial? Yes, I will share here in the chat. And if you want to say a few words, Julia, just go ahead about this.
No, that's just kind of a document that I gathered, having the point of view of people saying climate change is not real, climate change is natural, or blah, blah, blah. And then I gathered historic facts, biological facts, and all scientific facts about it, answering these questions. If you have more questions, like if you know any more basic denial sentences you want to add to that, please share. It's not exhaustive at all, this slide, but it gives some nice arguments to share. And some of the slides are also have the sources if you want to look more on that.
I think that sometimes with this kind of people, with the deniers, well, that's my point of view. Sometimes it's important to acknowledge their opinion. Like, yes, okay, like maybe the Milankovitch cycles have an influence in our climate, and through millions of years, the Earth has passed like these ups and downs in the climate. Okay, yes, but humans, we are exacerbating. So I think it's important to, yes, okay, that's right, but you have to see the other side. And based on that, as humans, we need to take responsibility and then to take action. So I think it's a way that you're not saying, no, you're stupid. Like, no, you're wrong. You have to believe in climate change. I think it's important to acknowledge that concern, that opinion, and then like give this this like other side of the story, like, and then take action. Also, I have a question. I was reading the other day about, I don't know so much about communication, but I want to learn about it. And I was reading an article, and they say like there are like in some campaigns, in some effective campaigns, there are like 3 steps. You have to invite the participants to know, to feel, and do. And I understand that in the first part, to know, you have to communicate the situation, like what is the situation, why is important, for example. But in the second step, feel, they were talking about how emotions are important. People, they need to involve their emotions, they need to feel the problem. But what I don't understand, and my question is, do you know how, like which kind of strategies? I think it's sometimes quite hard to involve feelings, but they are important.
Thanks a lot for your question. This is great. And I'm going to talk about this very soon.
So I will wait.
Yeah, no. But that's very good. That's very good. And I think this is exactly what we need to talk about as well, because we are humans, and we don't resonate always with data, and we don't resonate with this kind of like not boring things. I also like data, but we want our hearts to beat. So we are made of flesh, and we need to connect through stories, and we need to connect through, like you said, emotions. So there are some strategies for that, and I hope I will get this covered. And we will have a second exercise that you are gonna get to practice to do your own message. So using the audiences, like using the ideas from the audiences that you had from the first exercise, and I hope I can talk maybe a little bit more about that and the role of emotions. And just to add very quickly, I also don't want to steal too much of your concentration for the exercise. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. I think I really lost my train of thought. So never mind, it wasn't important. Thanks everyone for doing this small exercise. Now I would like maybe to hear a few words from you. How, if you feel this helped you define your audience, and what was difficult to understand this audience, and what was easy perhaps. Of course, you don't really need to speak. That's also fine. Wow, this was an overwhelming amount of comments. I don't even know where to start, but well, that's okay.
I can share what I wrote.
Yes, no, you don't need to. It's not. I'm not making anyone share. Only if you want, of course.
No, it's okay. And actually, I have a question that arose from this exercise. That I was defining the audience. I would like to communicate with my friends. They have different backgrounds. However, they are Mexican and they are young. And why would they be interested in climate change? Well, I think because it's a crisis and it affects all of us. I think sometimes it's important to connect this abstract crisis. Sometimes it can seem like so big and so far from our reach. We have to connect that with our day-to-day basis. So I think I will start, like my goal will be to start by educating, to educate, to understand what is the situation and why should you care. And I was thinking about the content. It can be like an enjoyable and easy to process and fun content, so they can feel attractive to that. However, sometimes I quite against that type of content, because I think like nowadays, like people don't want to read, they just want easy to process content. So I'm quite against that, but I think it's the easiest way to communicate and to reach more people. Yeah, well, so those are like just my comments and my concern between like this easy to process content, that I'm quite against it, but I want to use it to reach more people.
Yes, I understand your struggles, and that's very valid worry. I must say to you that you can also think in that way, that making this easy and enjoyable, fun content, it's also a way to reach them in a later stage with the more deep and concrete and dense content as well. So it's also some sort of way to be able to reach the people that otherwise wouldn't be interested. So it's nice also to have a mix between these two contents. And if you do something fun, it doesn't mean that you need to give up on having deep analysis, or to have deep content, or this kind of like really deep communication that also happens sometimes with the fun content, but it's not goodbye to the to the reading, or to this more type of kind of like deep content that you were mentioning. I don't know if I was clear or not, but this is basically it. And I see that Andrea commented that it was not easy to know why they wouldn't be interested in the climate issue. And I agree with you, but this is also an important exercise, because when we are in this persuasion types of process and communication, it's also very important to understand in which point they wouldn't be interested in what we talk about. And in order to, and I agree very much with what you were talking at the beginning of the workshop, that sometimes the best way, the middle of the workshop, the best way to deal with climate denial is to try to understand their own logics and why, and not to treat as some crazy people shouting to the moon, but try to understand and give some benefit of the doubt. So maybe that's one of the best ways of convincing people. I see that we have one more person here. Welcome to the workshop. We are now doing some exercises about our audiences. We have now one more quick part that we are going to discuss how we can create a good message on climate change. And this will include, for example, the role of emotions and strategies that we can use. For example, visual design. But before that, we are going to have a quick break of 5 minutes, and you can take some water, rest your eyes from the screen, maybe stretch a little in this 5 minutes, and we are going to be back in 5 minutes. I don't know how to make maths, but I hope you do know. Maybe you're better at maths than me. So so I guess I'll see you in 5.
I think Rachel wants to add something.
Yeah, just go ahead.
It's okay. People can break. I'll just write in the chat. It was just like a thought to what Sarah had mentioned. I'll write in the chat.
For which part of the discussion? The engaging with audiences that are less interested in the topic? Was this comment, Rach? Okay.
You're on mute, Raisa.
Of course, I muted. So, well, anyways, so I'm speaking alone like an idiot. Thanks for letting me know. Welcome back from the break, everyone. I was just highlighting Rachel's comments in the chat on how to deal with climate denial. And she was saying that maybe asking directly what our audiences need might be very helpful. And I can totally agree with that. And this is, for example, how I started this workshop by asking you what your were expectations and what were your needs and what you wanted to achieve with this workshop. So I think this is a really good tip for any type of communication efforts that you're gonna do in the future. So now I'm gonna talk a little bit about how you can find your own voice and how you can find your unique voice. I think now it's good. Yes, you all see my screen, I believe. Yes, so about this part is to talk a bit about what makes you unique and what brings the human touch to the entire communication part. And I think this might be one of the most important parts of today's workshop, is that this is the part that we connect to the hearts of the other humans. So with this, you are going to reflect about what are your values. So what are the things that you value in life? So for me, inclusion and diversity, they are very important, honesty, trust, and it's always nice to take a little bit of time to reflect what is really important. For some, this might be family, for others might be friends. It might also vary with your culture, but this is a very important reflection, because when you communicate, you bring these values into the communication. You can also reflect about what things make you unique and what are the unique perspectives that you can add. So when I was talking to Meredith about feminism and about using photography to communicate about feminism, this is exactly one example, one tangible example of something that you love, of something that you are passionate about, that you can use for convincing for climate action. And always thinking about your own personal history and where you come from. So I'm an immigrant woman, and all the stories of migrating and living in different spaces and going through different cultural changes, they always add unique things to the table, and I use them usually to communicate about. So for example, this week I was doing a pitch, and I was telling a lot of my own personal stories. So how I came here to Finland, how I came to study what I study, how I miss my family, or all these sorts of things. So you can use these real stories. And when we were talking about it before, how you bring emotions, this is one strategy that you can use. Now I will give the floor to Taylor. She will talk a little bit how visual design can also lead to climate action. So Taylor, you may speak now. I think, is everything good? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
All right, thanks. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a user experience designer, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about how visual design plays a role in social media. So first, I just wanted to start off by talking about design. So I always find it really interesting to kind of step back and think about everything around us that's been designed and kind of the role that it plays. So everything has been designed, from the building that you're in to the Zoom call that we're on to social media visuals. And its design can be a tool, and it's very powerful and can subconsciously influence our behaviors and our decisions. So for example, the way that roads are designed influence the way that we travel. Similarly, the pictures and visuals that we see on social media can influence how we understand and interact with crises and solutions. And with the rise of social media, we've seen an increase in pictures and visually designed content all the time. There was a study that was done that found that we react to climate change visuals with emotion. And oftentimes these visuals are negative and distressing, and they can actually turn people away from action. So for an example, polar bear starving, that can actually turn people away from climate change action. And it's also been found that using fearful representations can be counterproductive. And so it's important to use design visuals that portray messages of hope and inspiration, action, and change, or it's effective to use visuals in this way as it relates to nature and the climate crisis. And one resource that I wanted to share, so this is on the right side of the slide, is called Climate Visuals. And they focus on providing evidence-based imagery that supports more effective communication around climate change. And they've developed climate visual principles that are applied to each picture with a description of how that image relates to that visual principle. So I wanted to include this just as an idea. This might or might not be helpful for you, but they have this database of pictures. Most of them are Creative Commons. And as you can see here, this is a picture of floodplain tree planting. It relates to their principles of telling new stories and showing local but serious climate impacts. And they've done research on all of these different visuals and their principles. So this one says that their research found that showing people proactively engaging in ways of building resilience to climate change is likely to produce a positive emotional reaction among viewers. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Visuals can be extremely important in how people receive messages and how it makes them feel in terms of action and inspiration as well. So that's all I have for now, and I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks a lot for this very informative explanation on visuals. You can see the link on the slide, but Taylor, if you could send in the chat as well, because yeah, thank you a lot. So Taylor will also share in the chat with you if you want to explore maybe a bit of the platform. There are many different images there, and it's very rich. So it's something that we can definitely use whenever we communicate about climate change. Sorry. Now we go to our section that it's finding nature. And it's also a bit about emotions, but I would like maybe to just start a quick discussion. It can be either in the chat or you can also say it out loud. But I would maybe like to ask to you how we can integrate nature into our communication and how we can evolve emotions around nature and communicate about nature using emotions. So I would like maybe to hear a bit from you on that regard, and if you have any thoughts or opinions or any ideas of how we can do this.
Yes, I can go. Yeah, I think WWF, they do a lot with like emblematic species, and it works really well because I think that people have a lot of empathy for non-human animals. So I guess that's a way of doing it.
That's definitely true. You can always show a cute animal to the audience to gain their sympathy. That's very true. Any more thoughts or ideas?
I think also we can use the voices of people everybody knows and have a positive view of them, and think, oh, I like this. That if there is a person commonly known as being positive, having good message that is always well received, using that person and their voice could also be really positive and involve more people.
Yes, that's very good. These days, I was thinking that I really wanted to bring David Attenborough to one of Youth for Nature's event, but unfortunately, no one had his contact. But this is a strategy that I always think about as well. And it's been very successful. For example, in Brazil, one famous actor, he has been doing a lot of this, that he found out about climate change, and he found out how and a big problem is, and he's kind of using all of his resources and all of his media and everything to talk about how important it is to engage with nature. And he's been sharing these very nice and touching stories about how he has children and he goes with them to plant different different types of trees, and he's doing a lot of urban gardening and so on. So I think that this type of initiative can bring a lot of attention to nature issues as well. Yes, I can definitely repeat the questions. I just stopped sharing the slides so we can see each other's faces. But these are the questions. They are a bit confusing because I changed them during the workshop, because I noticed from our interactions that they could be a bit more interesting than the ones that I planned before. But it's basically how we can integrate nature into our communication strategy in social media, and how we can make it emotional. So this would be the two questions, kind of phrased in a weird manner on the slides because I did very quickly.
My hand is up. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, no, I cannot see it. Sorry. You can just
okay.
go ahead and just go and speak.
Something that I use like personally in my personal life, because like obviously I'm not that famous person, and so I'm not David Attenborough to be able to communicate like that, and I'm not a scientist either, and so I personally like follow a lot of like influencers or experts or community leaders online, and then I reshare their content, but when I reshare it, I add a comment that personalizes it for me. And I think that personalizing it is what really like brings your audience into that topic too, especially if your audience is like you. And so, yeah, that's a strategy that I use.
This is very good. And I think this is the key message here, to bring your person to this and to bring your values, your story, your feelings, and sometimes even the pain you can bring to your communication message. So I've noticed that the most successful communication pieces that I had good reach, good impact, good engagement, they came really from a place of pain. So many times I'm desperate or I'm anxious and I just want to do something. And I tell this story, and it turns out to speak to people. And I think that this is also very valid, and this is very good as well. So you can always think about in that way as well. I will go quickly to talk a little bit about what is a good message on climate change. I also have the feeling that this will be quite obvious to you. Just before I see some comments here. So Jonathan is talking about community outreach and sensibilization, and I think this is very good. Definitely agree to you, Jonathan. And everything we do, we are supported by different communities, and this is also true for the online environment. So always look for your own community. And then Andrea is saying that people like to see something that they feel, they know. So sometimes showing forests, lake, ocean, and in the caption talk about the situation can work, definitely. So always using visual resources and explaining about it. Yeah, I think that this makes it very relatable. And that's very good, Esmeralda. How can we make it personal when it's the account of an organization? I think that for this, Rach might even have better ideas than me. But I would say that for one, you can involve the members of the organization to go there and talk about and use their own faces and their own stories to communicate in the organization. So it's not that only organization is speaking to people, but that they are people and real faces is speaking to other people and to the organization's audiences. So I would say that this is definitely one thing, but maybe Rach can explain maybe more about this. I think she would be better.
I think that you're right, Raisa, that like having the people behind the organization, especially like as a youth organization, I think can be really powerful. And I think also that like your organization has a personality, and so you maybe have like, if you have a branding guide or like an understanding of like the voice or the tone or the way that you communicate as an organization, you have a personality. And some of the like youth-led organizations that have the best kind of like following online on social media definitely have like really strong voices and personalities that you can understand as a follower. Yeah, so I would say like defining your organization's, it's your brand, but it's basically your organization's personality can really help with that. And using humor is like number one. 2021, everybody says use humor. That's like one of the best things you can do as an organization.
I must also say that I see many of these organizations that they have been using pets or cute animals to kind of like communicate to people through them. So one example of successful communication, maybe more from the private market side, is that they create this one character that it's a dog, and every time this character talks to people, it talks through the dog, and the dog has its own language and its own way of speaking, and in the end, even its own animation. It can be some sort of a weird idea, but at the same time, it can make it very personal. So in one student organization here, one of the symbols is a fox. So we are always calling people, members, foxes, and you always refer to the organization as the fox, and you have these little foxes that they look like teddy bears, and you take everywhere in the event. So this can also be some nice way of adding some personal touch to your organizational communication. I see that Julia wants to speak.
Yes, just to add on the language and whole communication thing, I think it's really important also to focus on the type of language you're using and to have this very specific wording, and not being too broad, because being too broad, you might not be targeting the right audience, or being too broad in your audience, but having this specific some words used by other organizations as well, that you are doing kind of the similar job, you know. And also I think, yeah, not using too much and all the hashtags and so on. It's also really important to spread your word around. And I wanted also to add that when I was working with the communication team, they said that as an organization, try not to use hashtags that are too broad, such as hashtag nature, but try to focus really more on really specific hashtags that specific people will click on, not only random people, which is, I think it's really important to acknowledge, because I would have never thought about it before.
Yes, I think that's really very relevant and good comment, Julia, because I think it also goes with this idea of just reaching, going for the big hashtags, very popular ones. When if you go very to the specifics that your audience uses, you might be more effective. And one way of finding this out is to stalk your audience. So if your audience is your friends, just stalk them on social media, see what types of hashtags they use. You can also stalk your members, the members of your organizations or your followers, and see what is relevant for them and what type of hashtags they are following and using. So this is also a strategy to know what is relevant and what can be used. So check what they are sharing and what they are liking. We move now to practice curating your own message on climate change. And I will share my screen now again. For this part, I think we have a very good understanding already. So basically, the good message on climate change, many of you already mentioned, it's hopeful and it doesn't create more anxiety. But it's very important that it also has a straightforward objective, so that you will require a clear takeaway from the audience. So you don't want your audience to be confused without knowing what to do, because this is also one of the components that create anxiety on us, that we have many possibilities for acting and we don't know where we do it and what exactly we do it. It's also not a copy paste of climate change reports or what scientists are saying, but it has your unique voice. And it also recognizes the whole of nature, role of nature as a central part in the climate practice. So I like you to think about that you are telling a story and that you are engaging with humans. And like I said, we all have beating hearts. The bad message on climate change, on the contrary, it's very catastrophic. It raises fear and doubt, and it leads to inaction. It's a self-promotional campaign, so you can always think of communication as a gift and as a service that you do for others. So it's not something that you, of course, you can always have selfish reasons for whatever you do in life, and that's not a problem. And it's also fine to think about your personal brand and everything, but with communication, when you give a gift to someone, you don't want to overwhelm this person. You want to give this very precious gift, this only gift that it will be perfect for the person. So think of communication as something like that. And finally, it's not a burden for you. So it shouldn't be a burden, and it shouldn't be something to overwhelm you. It needs to feel somehow easy. And when we get all these factors, so when we get the insight on your audience that we discussed in the first place, when we get the clear goals, so what you want to achieve, mobilize action or inform or educate, when we get your voice and natures, and when it's backed by science, the intersection of all of this is a very nice message on climate change. And now we move to the, to the exercise number 2. And it's gonna work more or less like the first one, that I'm gonna share some slides with you. And you're gonna practice curating your own message. This is predicted to last 10 minutes. It's gonna last maybe a bit more, maybe 7, so we can stay a little bit within the schedule. So what we are gonna do is that you have 2 options. So you can either curate your message for your own audience. Now we are practicing written message, but it can always be for videos, pictures, photos, art, anything that resonates better to your audience in the future, but this is just for practicing. So you can have 2 options. So one would be more challenging, that it's a report from IUCN on nature-based solutions, and you can do this kind of like summary for targeted for social media on the page 3. And another one, it's a story by Amanda, who is one of our storytellers in Youth for Nature from our storytelling campaign. And you can also try to translate her story and her solution to a language and to a message that would be good for your audience. Just very quickly, you see here on the bottom of the page that it's written treasure hunt. So Youth for Nature at the beginning of next week will start a treasure hunt event. So we are gonna hide some treasures, which are stories from our storytelling campaign. And the person who is able to gather all the treasures by the end of the Spring of Hope campaign, the first one, will get a prize. And this can be very fun and cool. So you have a treasure here, just to let you know if you are interested in doing this treasure hunt online. But I will share, yes, I think you have already the link to this practice, but I'm gonna share in the chat again anyways. And you can write your names. I see that some of you already did, and in 7 minutes, we can discuss very briefly about the exercise. And in case you have any questions, just go ahead and ask.
Hi everyone. Sorry, can I just say something? First of all, hi to everyone, and thank you, Raisa, for welcoming me. And sorry because I didn't answer right away, but I was just leaving a meeting and I came to feed the wild family of cats that is living in my garden. I can show you. Wait, how can I change the camera? Oh, okay. So, and there are lots. Sorry. So I cannot write right now because I'm in my phone and I don't know what time I'm coming back home. So how can I do this? Like to join the
It's okay.
exercise?
It's okay. Don't worry. That's very nice scenario. So it looks very relaxing. Definitely interesting. I will share the slides and also the exercises link. So you can do this on your own. So it's also okay. And
Okay.
of course, if you want to chat a little, we can also chat a little now. I'm always up to chatting.
Okay. Thank you.
If this doesn't make everyone difficult for everyone else to concentrate, but we can always chat a little bit.
Thank you.
Yes, Esmeralda, I'm gonna share with you the link to the document, and I also sharing. Yes, I'm gonna share this now. Do you mean sharing the link to the exercises or the slides that the training slides?
No, I have the slides. I can't click on the IUCN report and on the story. That doesn't work.
Oh, yes, of course, of course. I'll do
Thank
that
you.
now. Yeah, no worries. Jonathan, I see your question. If we think social media campaigns will reach to the most affected persons to climate change, or if we need other measures to fight for nature. I think we definitely need other measures. Social media campaigning is not going to be enough, and we need all sorts of different actions in different fronts. So we need decision makers, we need youth in politics, we need youth in every space of decision making, we need youth in the private sector, we need youth working with law, working with engineering, we need people in the care jobs from the care sector. So I think that social media campaigning is one of the possibilities for action that we have, but we definitely need other measures, which doesn't mean that we need as one person do all of these measures. So this is not really what I mean here. I think that's also what is great about the community is that you can rely on others to do what types of jobs and to act on different fronts of climate change. But social media campaigning is one of them, especially now during COVID, when everything looks so hopeless and that we will always be on Zoom all day forever until the end of our days. No, I'm just kidding. But social media is important, but not everything. I think my message here to you is that we would, this is just one tool that I would like to highlight to you that can be used. And it's just one possibility of action during these times. So it's just something to be hopeful, I guess, that even online we can connect to others and we can do great things. I see that, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, is Raquel. I would pronounce it like that in Brazilian Portuguese.
Yes, it's the
Okay,
same.
you have your hand raised.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask you all a question. Like, your opinion on something. Like, at least in Portugal, the climate strikes are still happening, and some of them happen in a presential way. And I want to ask your opinion about that because it's kind of a conflict because all the world is in a pandemic right now, but also there are some things that we still need to fight for it in a more hard way, maybe. So I'd like to know your opinion on that.
Oh, that's so difficult. I really don't know how to give an opinion on that because it's very tricky. There is definitely not an easy answer. On one way, we have the corona situation, and I think we all need to be healthy in order to do climate action. So before we give water to others, before we feed others, we need to feed ourselves and we need to take care of ourselves. So I wouldn't encourage everyone to risk getting corona or getting sick or anything like that to protest. I would personally not ask for people to do that. But at the same time, I understand the urgency of the climate crisis, and I understand the urgency of acting, and I understand that there were many relevant and important protests that happened during COVID, and I think they should happen, and I think they were important to happen when they happened. So I'm not entirely comfortable either condemning it, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have a reason, I think it's not an easy answer to this. It's a difficult problem. It's a difficult issue. What definitely doesn't work, I think, is that in many cases, in many countries, the restrictions, they are not in place for some things. So for example, if you need to work, or maybe I'm thinking about the Brazilian case, that everything has been kind of hectic and very uncareful. So I wouldn't judge if people would like to protest because they were never taken care of in that way. But I don't know if someone else would like to reply as well and bring your opinions. That could also be good because I think it's a very complex issue. And maybe you can also share your opinion with us.
Okay, thank you for your answer, and I agree with you. Like, because I don't have an opinion to like because on one side I understand the need for it, but on the other side, maybe this is not now the moment for do it in this way. But it's like you said, maybe in some cases or some kind of protests make sense. But then if some of them happen, like if some kind of protest happens, why the others can happen in a safe way too? Like I've seen some protests happen in a really conscious way, like everyone wearing masks, and they had their seats really already, how can I say, booked, and they were a few meters aside, so it was kind of a healthy way or safe way to do it. But sometimes it does not take, I don't know, it's really complicated.
I would also say that I think crises, they are very bad, but they also give us the opportunity to be creative. And I also think that this is the moment for us to explore fully our creativity on how we can bring attention to issues without exposing activists to certain risks, and not only risks of corona, but even other risks that derive from this. So I've been thinking today a lot about how there were, or for example, I can maybe give you a tangible example of one activist here in Tampere where I live, and he does this sorts of like very crazy things. He dress up as a kind of like gigantic animals, and he goes to places to slide on the snow and do this sorts of things, like to really to act in a bit of like ridiculous way, or to act in a very playful way, and all of this, and he manages to get a lot of attention by himself and completely alone. So I think that this is one example of things that we can do. So again, maybe using a bit of humor, and maybe using other sorts of creative tools. And with that, I also think that that's also nice about the community, and that's also nice about how we can find on this type of creative protesting, because many countries, many societies, they've been through repressive governments, so they were not allowed, and many are still not allowed to protest, for example, and they come up with the most creative ways of doing this. So I think it's we have accumulated learning from these societies, and even from our own past, and even from our own history. So we can learn how they protested and how they made their voices heard, and we can maybe do the same now. So I don't know. I also see this. It's not that it's positive or that COVID is a good thing, but I also see as an opportunity to try to be more creative around protesting and doing activism. And yes, and Rach is mentioning how online activism can be great to connect movements across the world and build global solidarity like we are doing now. We have people from all over the world that we are connecting and sharing experiences, and all of this happens due to climate activism online. So it's definitely not lost. So I think that this was it for the exercise. I know that this is a bit more of a complex exercise. So if it's okay, I think you can have more time to do this individually. So by yourselves, or if you want, if you have time and if you want, you can maybe have 5 minutes more, and we discuss a little bit after. So which you prefer, it's okay. So it's fine. Or if you don't have an opinion, I would just try to stick to the schedule. But if you want to have more time, it's also okay. Yes, okay. So maybe I will just wrap up everything. Just one moment. So there you go. So the message, that the bottom line here today is that communication is a gift. So whenever you are curating your messages, stories, videos, LinkedIn posts, articles, blog posts, everything you would like to share in social media, think that you are giving a gift to a friend, and you want to make this very special, and you want it to make it very unique. So you're going to concentrate in one nice package, one nice gift, and you're going to make sure that this only one gift will be perfect for your friend. So this is the message that I want to give to you today. And also stay tuned in the Spring of Hope campaign. I'm gonna maybe Rachel, if you can share in the chat the link to the campaign. We have a nice toolkit on how to live your best spring for the climate. I know that it's not spring everywhere for everyone here, but we can also act within the spirit of spring, of the good vibes, of the change, and of the hope and everything everywhere we are. And I invite everyone to stay engaged. If you would like to win a prize, you can also follow the treasure hunt. I think I shared the link. It's gonna be shared in the same page. It's not yet live, but stay tuned and you will see. And also follow our storytelling campaign. You can submit your own story of climate and nature. We are always very excited about new stories coming. And I think this is it for today. I see some messages in the chat. I will stop sharing now. So yes, one of the messages in the chat was a link that I asked. Thanks, Rachel, a lot for sharing. Thanks, Sarah, for the communication as a gift. I also like this metaphor a lot. And thanks everyone who attended and who all of you were very engaged and very nice comments and inputs. And I'm very happy for this great group. So thanks a lot. And I hope to see you in our future events. We have the Meme Festival. I said this many times, but this is an example of fun communication. And I think it's going to be super fun. And if you want to stay a few minutes to talk more and discuss, I'm going to be here. But yes, I guess this is it. Class dismissed. Don't worry, it's okay. Don't really worry. Everything is fine. We all have hectic lives, Raquel, so it's all good. Don't worry.
Yeah, I
about
was
it.
going to say the same. Sorry, I was so late.
Don't worry.
I
It's
mixed
all
up the
it's all good.
times.
Yeah, it's all good. Rachel had this incredible idea of recording. So this very innovative and new idea that no one ever thought about. No kidding. So this is very good. We are gonna have a recording too. And
So
thanks,
will
Jonathan,
will you send that to us?
Yes, this will be sent because we also have some problems with the link that was sent through Eventbrite. So not everyone received it. At least I received some personal feedback that the link was not sent or did not receive. So I think this is good. Yeah, we are going to share. And,
Thank you very much.
And thanks a lot, Jonathan, for sharing the link to your work. I'm also following you now.